Hey, this is Gary Bates, and I serve as the forage specialist for the University of Tennessee. And for our field day, the thing that I wanted to talk a little bit about is the importance of stubble height for maintaining a good, persistent stand of grass. You know, if you want to have a really persistent and a profitable stand of our perennial forages, things like tall fescue and orchard grass, we need to get the stand life to last a long time. You know, if we're having to reseed, you know, an orchard grass field every 3 or 4 years, there's going to be some significant expenses to that reseeding. But if I can get it to last, you know, 6 or 7 years, then my costs are going to be a lot lower and it's going to end up being a more profitable stand. So we all can think about things that influence our persistence. Some things, you know, we can't control. Things like drought, maybe insects or disease. We can't always really control those things. Mother Nature just, you know, happens to put those on us. But there are some things that we can control. So we can think about something like maybe soil fertility. You know, if we can provide the nutrients that a plant needs, this plant's going to be more aggressive, more productive. It's going to last longer. One of the big things that influences the persistence of a stand of grass is going to be how we manage our stubble height. How low we graze it, how low we cut it versus how high we do it. That's one of the big things that influences persistence that sometimes we don't always think about. So right here I have just an orchard grass plant that I dug up. And one of the things to understand, okay, so, you know, I've taken this plant and I've cut the top off to make it easier to see, but what one of these plants is trying to do is it's trying to produce a lot of leaf, a lot of stem, it's trying to produce a seed head so that it can reproduce itself. So anytime that you cut a plant, that's really a pretty aggressive kind of thing to do. It kind of hurts the plant. So one of the things really that a plant's trying to do is it's trying to produce a lot of leaves, a lot of stem, and then eventually produce a seed head so that it can produce seed to reproduce itself. So anytime that we cut a plant, that's actually a really traumatic thing to happen to this plant when you're taking off a lot of vegetative material, and that plant's going to then try to start that process all over again. So if we look at this orchard grass plant right here, you know, what we need to understand is this plant is storing a lot of its energy reserves, its carbohydrates, in the roots, but also the top few inches of this stem. That's where it has a lot of carbohydrates. And so anytime that I mow, I have the potential of taking those energy reserves off, which is really a big stress on the plant. And so what I want to try to do is anytime I get ready to clip, I want my clipping height, or if I'm grazing it, it's a pasture, my grazing height to be high enough so that I'm leaving enough stubble so that I don't take those root reserves off, but I also leave just a little bit of leaf area so that plant can capture sunlight for photosynthesis and to be able to make energy. And so the thing that's extremely important that really influences how aggressive a plant is able to regrow is my cutting height, my grazing height. Generally what we say for our cool season grasses, things like tall fescue and orchard grass, is I want to try to keep at least 3 to 4 inches of stubble, which is going to mean somewhere up about this height. So that way I've got a few leaves that are going to be down below that clipping or that grazing line so that plant can still photosynthesize a little bit. Plus I'm leaving a lot of those stored carbohydrates that plant can use to be able to grow. Now, one of the things, you know, that I get questions about a lot of times is people will say, well, you know, Gary, my orchard grass stands don't last as long as they used to. Why are they not lasting as long? And one of the reasons is if you think about over the course of the last, you know, 15 or 20 years, we have really changed a lot of the machinery that we used to cut hay. We used to use, you know, sickle mowers, which were, you know, blades that move back and forth and that cut, and those things always tended to be, you know, 4, 5, 6 inches above the ground. Over the last, you know, couple of decades, we have moved more toward, you know, disc mowers and hay binds, that kind of thing, and those machines, if you don't adjust them right, they can tend to cut a lot lower. And so routinely we'll see people that will cut hay fields, and those things will be cut probably at 2 inches tall. Well, you cut, you know, at that height, not only are you taking off all the leaves, but you're taking it so low that you're taking a lot of those stored carbohydrates off. So one of the things that we recommend for producers if you're cutting hay, particularly on our cool season grasses, fescue, orchard grass, that kind of thing, is raise those disc mowers up so you're leaving at least 3 inches of stubble. If it's a pasture that you're grazing, it's the same principle. You do not want to graze those plants all the way into the ground. You want to make sure that you're leaving at least 3 inches of stubble. And it really all comes back to plant physiology and about what that plant's trying to do. You don't want that plant to have to use all of its energy reserves to try to be able to regrow. You want it to be able to maintain energy reserves, as well as you want to leave just enough leaf area so that it can still photosynthesize a little bit. There's an interesting research study that was done quite a few years ago where they took and they clipped plants down at different heights. And one of the things that they saw was that when you take one of these plants and you cut it down to a 2 or 3 inch height, basically for the next 3 or 4 days, you shock that plant so there is no root growth whatsoever. And so it is that traumatic event. So if you can leave a little bit more stubble, a little bit maybe more residual leaf area, it's not quite as much of a shock. You'll get more root growth, okay, which is going to help you when it comes time for the summertime for plants to be able to survive drought because they've got better root growth. But it's also not going to stress the plant by removing all the energy reserves. So I guess the key thing that I want you to get from our talk is pay attention to your stubble height. When you're grazing, use some form of rotational grazing where you can put the animals on, graze it down, but when those plants get down to about 3 or 4 inches, move the animals off, put them into a new field, and let that plant regrow so you don't graze it down too low. If you're mowing it for hay, what you want to do is watch how low is that disc mower cutting. If you're cutting it and it's down at 1 inch or 2 inches, you need to raise that mower up, adjust the angle of those blades so that you're leaving 3 to 4 inches of height. If you do that, you will easily extend your stand life by 1, 2, maybe 3 years. And it's just because you're helping that plant be more efficient with this carbohydrate use. So hopefully this has helped you a little bit, let you understand why we have some stand persistence issues. It doesn't solve every problem that we have, but it solves one of the major issues that we have with stand persistence, and that's grazing or cutting too low.